Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. I hope you all had a fantastic Christmas with your families. It's one of my favorite, if not the favorite holiday of mine. Oh, if you're new here, my name is Jennifer and we talk about scary, spooky, quirky, and sometimes tragic history on this channel. And after a wholesome, cozy, cute time like Christmas, I didn't think it'd be right to bring you a story that is as gruesome as the last ones we've covered. So today I bring you a quirky one. Yep, we're gonna talk about the stinky secret that was covered up by luxury. It was one of the most iconic symbols of opulence, but was also one of the smelliest places in history. And today we're gonna talk about the bad hygiene, poor plumbing, and some seriously funky smells. So grab a drink, grab a snack, and maybe a clothespin for your nose, because today we're traveling back to France in the 1620s to visit the Palace of Versailles. So let's start with Louis XIV, also known as the Sun King. In the late 1600s, Louis just decided that Paris wasn't cutting it for him anymore. He wanted a place fit for a king, and he transformed his father's old hunting lodge into the sprawling, opulent masterpiece we know as Versailles. And while Louis was building his dream palace, he wasn't too concerned about, basic necessities like plumbing. The palace opened in 1682 and the court officially moved in. And I never knew this before I heard about the crazy history of Versailles, because I always just pictured it, to be the palace for nobles, but it was essentially a small, bustling town. At its peak, it could house 5,000 to 10,000 people at any given time, including royals, nobles, servants, and military personnel. Back then, Versailles housed thousands of people, and here's the kicker. There were only a handful of bathrooms. Imagine 10,000 people all crammed into one place with nowhere to go. Literally. Now, personal hygiene, that was another disaster, because back in the 17th and 18th centuries, bathing wasn't just rare, it was thought to be outright dangerous. King Louis XIV himself only bathed a total of 3 times his whole life. People believed that water spread disease, so they avoided it, like the plague. And instead, nobles would cover themselves with perfume, and like so much perfume, and not just any perfume, but those super heavy floral scents that could probably choke you out faster than the stench they were trying to hide. Like the ones that Aunt Betsy wears to Thanksgiving. And don't get me started on the teeth, because this is where I got really grossed out, because dentistry was primitive at best, and rotting teeth and bad breath, well, it was kind of like a part of the vibe back then. They didn't floss, they didn't brush, but at least they had their fans and handkerchiefs to hide behind. Women often used fans to cover their faces, especially to hide the effects of poor dental hygiene. The consumption of sugar back then was a luxury that only the wealthy could afford, and this led to widespread tooth decay amongst the nobles. Many courtiers, including Queen Marie Therese, had significant dental issues, and the fans helped them mask the smell of their rotting teeth. They did use powders and mouthwashes, but they were far less effective than what we have today. So with such little bathrooms, what happened when nature called? Well, some nobles used chamber pots, fancy portable toilets, and these pots were often emptied straight out the windows into the gardens or the hallways. Imagine walking down a corridor and oops, someone just dumped yesterday's business in your path. And if there wasn't a chamber pot handy, they would just have to relieve themselves wherever they could. And I mean wherever. This included behind curtains, in hallways, and even just in the corners of the palace. Nobles would wait hours to see the king, so they were often too scared to leave their place, resulting in them doing their business right where they stood, because people would just go. Hey, I get it. When I Gotta pee, I gotta pee. Even in the gardens. They're stunning now, but they weren't immune to the mess. Human waste, decaying plants, and manure from the stables all contributed to the stench. Even worse, the palace grounds were built on swampland. The permanent stench that mixed with the odors of sweat, excrement, and standing water from the grand fountains. Perfumes and potpourri vases were scattered around the palace to cover up the pervasive smells, but they just couldn't fully mask it. That reminds me, I remember a queen, I don't remember which one, was getting married, and the reason that flowers are so prominent in weddings now is because back then they were used to mask the smells, which is crazy. I will give them credit for this because most nobles did wash their faces and hands in the morning, but full baths were rare. Actually, the concept of cleanliness was more about fresh linens than actual cleanliness. The nobility would change their undergarments and sheets regularly, as linen was believed to absorb dirt and odors. King Louis, for example, would change multiple times throughout the day to show off his wealth and status. Like, no one cares how rich you are, you stink. The more often you changed your shirt, the richer you appeared. Which makes me wonder, like, was everyone just in denial, or were they just so used to the stinkiness? Or did stinky back then mean a different stinky than it does today? Most people believed that too much bathing, especially in warm water, was bad for the health because it opened the pores to diseases. The king himself did have a grand tub, but he preferred to be wiped down with cloths soaked in alcohol rather than taking regular baths. I guess some people nowadays do think baths are still gross. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Like, some people shower and then take a bath, so they're not just sitting in their own filth. I guess that's up for debate now too. So you get it, they wake up, they'd wash their hands and faces and then just spray perfume all over the bodies. That's it. That was their routine. And even though they really took care of their linen and changing their clothes daily, they still stunk because of the issues with body odor, and also the fabric back then wasn't that easy to be washed. So even the expensive outfits worn to court couldn't be cleaned properly. And that just led to a general stench lingering in the air. Visitors even wrote about the smells of Versailles. Actually, one time Marie Antoinette, she visited and got hit by poo-poo out of a chamber pot. One visitor described it to be a mix of, quote, unwashed bodies, rotting food, and excrement, end quote. Another called it the most overwhelming stench imaginable. And I'm telling you, it was so bad that even the famous writer Voltaire once described Versailles as the worst smelling place in France. So I guess they weren't used to the smells. But I guess the people living there were probably used to it because the court just rolled with it. They just didn't care all that much because they still had their silk gowns, powdered wigs, and fancy perfumes to distract themselves. So it was a house of delusion. But I guess it does hit Louis or make him feel some type of way because, believe it or not, they do try to freshen things up. Louis XIV loved fountains, and the sound of running water was supposed to create an illusion of cleanliness. I don't know if that means they did something about it. Gardens were filled with lavender, roses, and citrus trees to mask the smell, and at least that was nice. But people still said, you know, that no amount of flowers could hide the funk. And here's the wild thing. Versailles' stench wasn't just about poor hygiene or lack of plumbing. People said that it symbolized the excesses of the French monarchy. The nobles lived in splendor while the people outside the palace struggled with poverty and disease. And in a way, the stink of Versailles was a metaphor for the rot within the system itself. It's a very deep way of thinking about it. As the years went on, especially after the French Revolution, Versailles began to deteriorate. However, with its transformation into a museum after the monarchy fell, significant efforts were made to improve the palace's sanitation. So yeah, Don't worry, today if you visit, the palace is equipped with up-to-date restroom facilities, plumbing, and HVAC systems to regulate air quality and prevent unpleasant odors. And while the palace is no longer plagued by the overwhelming smells of the past, you might still encounter a faint mustiness in some areas due to the age and vast size of the building. However, these are not the putrid odors of yesteryear, rather a normal part of preserving such an ancient structure. The staff works super hard to ensure that artifacts and furniture are regularly cleaned and cared for, and visitors now experience a sanitized, well-preserved version of Versailles, free from the unsanitary conditions that once plagued its halls, thanks to the centuries of meticulous restoration work as well. Because, I mean, we're talking everything from furniture to tapestries to the intricate moldings. They've all been cleaned, polished, and replaced when necessary. So the next time you're daydreaming about living like royalty, just remember, it wasn't all ball gowns and chandeliers. Versailles was beautiful, I mean, is beautiful, yes, but it was also kind of gross. But that's what makes history so fascinating, right? It's messy, it's stinky, but it's real. Well, thanks for hanging out with me today, you guys, to listen to my stinky story. I haven't visited the Palace of Versailles yet. I definitely plan to. Let me know if any of you guys have, and as always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Until next time, bye guys.